All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 138 of the 580 show. Just myself and a special guest, Luke Davis today. So, joining us from Wales.
Yeah.
Um, I'll give a little introduction. So, Luke is the owner of Kaos Strength Gym, and he's also a strongman coach. Um, Very well-known strongman promoter, especially for weight class athletes. For a long time, I think strongman was predominantly open classes, and Luke has been one of the people that has really pushed the weight class athletes, which is really cool. Especially just a couple weekends ago at the Chaos Classic, which we're going to talk about. And not only strongman promoter, coach, gym owner, he's also a competitor. Not as much recently, but he has deadlifted 925 pounds. Remember, we're predominantly American, so 925 pounds. What's that? 420 kilos.
20 kilos, yeah.
And if you're not watching on YouTube, Luke isn't the biggest guy ever. So a 925-pound deadlift, 420 kilos. That is how much did you weigh when you did that?
But 250 maybe.
Wow.
I
Wow.
pulled 903 at 231.
Wow. And that's is the Welsh record?
So 903 was the world record for the 105s.
Yeah.
925 was the Welsh heavyweight record before Gavin built and broke it. So
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
but
Yeah.
he weighs like 200 pounds more than me. So
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like super impressive list. Just if you've been deep in the weeds in strongman, you kind of know Luke. So I think I've just probably a lot of people have talked to you via DMs and stuff like that. I know I have. So it's just excited to finally get you on, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it's funny that there's like a disconnect between how long someone's been doing strongman or not. Because like if someone's new to it, they just know me as a promoter and a gym owner. They don't really realize I actually do lift sometimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. I remember just like years ago when I got into it, just seeing you comment on stuff on starting strongman. I think just
yeah.
like just it's weird how small our little strongman bubble is, even if
Well,
how big we think it is, it's not.
yeah, I've been on starting strongman from the start because I remember like when I first started doing it like 12 years ago. The main place for learning stuff was like bodybuilding.com in the powerlifting section. And
Right.
Cale Beck was on there. So I've known Cale Beck online for like 12, 15 years. So
Wow, that's
I've been
crazy.
on starting strongman since the beginning, really, and just
Yeah, it's such a good tool. Like I refer so many people to starting strongman.
yeah, it's
There's
great.
like you said, I remember being on the bodybuilding.com forums like when I was in college, just not even specifically for strongman stuff, but yeah, the starting strongman has like a search engine too. So you can type in like power stairs, you can type in log press, whatever, and any of that stuff. Even if you're traveling to a city, you can type in that city name in the search bar and see what generates before you even have to make a post, because it is such an active group. But yeah, so Chaos Weekend has come and gone. What you know, just bluntly, how do you rate your weekend? How did it go in your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it went really well. Normally after a show, I'm always like, oh, we should this went wrong, this went wrong. And like surprisingly, at the end on Sunday, after we'd given out the awards, I was like, I think that went pretty well.
Yeah,
Um, we had a few minor hiccups on the Saturday with the 80s, which probably nobody noticed other than me, to be fair. Which we fixed for the Sunday. There was a few issues with like the flooring that we had to fix and a few other things. But yeah, the weekend as a whole went really well. All the guys seemed to enjoy it. We had good feedback from all the lifters. Good feedback from the audience. Good feedback from the people watching the live stream. So yeah,
yeah.
all success, I think.
Yeah, it seemed like if you just follow along the guys so I watched the whole weekend, and it's fun because like I'm an 80 kilo, and it's just fun to follow along like weight class at like the highest level, right? So
Yeah.
like, um but it seems like if you follow those guys on social media, they really like everyone was blasting out how awesome it was. It's funny to see the Americans that went over being tourists for the, for the following week and stuff, all, checking out the UK and everything, over there. But from a spectator, it was an awesome weekend, man. Especially that second day. Um, with the 90s, it was just such a stacked lineup, and it was so cool to so like how did it kind of, I mean, I know you've been promoting for a long time, and like we talked about, you've been in strongman for a long time. How did the chaos, like the 90 kg specifically, like I saw you say like you felt like that class is what needed it the most and like
Yeah.
had the best, but how did that start to like come to a reality where I said it on this podcast when it was leading up to your show? I thought on paper that was the most stacked 90 kg 90 kilo group we've ever put together. So like how the hell did you pull it off? Did you just kind of like throw the idea out there and just people started to help?
I was I was talking to Derek Owens um, after OSG,
Mm-hmm.
just on Instagram, a couple of weeks after OSG, so I think it was like December time last year. And he was like, he basically just planted the idea in my head. He was like, you should run a 90 kilo show. Basically, Derek wanted to come to the UK, I think.
Yeah, yeah. He just wanted to come. He just wanted to
So he
come
was like,
hang out.
yeah, basically, he was like, run a show for me. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I was like, so at the time we were just thinking it would be like, people we were friends with, people we knew, just get everybody together and lift essentially, just have like a fun weekend. And
Yeah.
then I reached out to a few people, asking them if they'd be interested basically. The first 10 go back to me, they were like, all keen. Um, I put like a cryptic post up on Instagram, and then someone reached out to me and offered me like a couple of £1,000 in sponsor money. Um, one of my friends basically, he was like, I want to see this happen. Um, I'll help you out, get going. So then obviously we had prize money then. So more people started messaging me compared to saying, how do I get involved? And it essentially spiraled. It wasn't meant to be anywhere near as big as it was.
Yeah.
Like it was supposed to be just a fun comp for the Americans to have an excuse to travel over to the UK. Um, and then it ended up being like the biggest 90 kilo show ever.
Yeah, it was.
And it's one of those things that you've probably noticed as a promoter as well. Once you announce like one big sponsor, other sponsors want to get on board.
Yeah.
Or once you announce a bit of money, you find that more money starts coming in. Whereas when you have nothing, nobody wants to. But like once the hype train starts going, more and more people want to get involved.
Right.
So yeah, it just escalated essentially, and then eventually I had about 40 guys message me asking if they could be invited. And I was like, well, I can't invite everybody, so then we have to do
Right.
the qualifier. Um, so
Which
yeah,
Yeah, I want to make sure we circle back to that qualifier because I've actually spoke with you about it and spoke with other people. But yeah, it's funny, like kind of what you're talking about. It's like FOMO, right? Like we all have FOMO of
yeah.
missing out, like with strongman. And a 90K, like a couple big 90 kg guys show up and then the next one and the next one. So that's really cool how that came to fruition. It seems like it's gonna be something that continues to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, like from my opinion, we were only missing like three guys I can think of worldwide. So in my
C
opinion, we were missing
CJ,
CJ Pierce,
Nick.
Naramu,
Yeah,
and Nick Myers, who had to pull out injured. So
that's
other than those three guys, I'm fairly sure we had all the rest of the best. So
right. Yeah, that's funny. That's the names I think pretty much
yeah,
everyone would have easily said. But you know how it is, man. It's so hard to get everyone in the same place at the same time. As much as we love it,
yeah.
it's still a hobby. So it's like, a wedding, a birthday, a vacation, anything can throw it
Oh
off.
yeah, I don't. I've always said to the guys like, don't feel bad saying no to me because I totally get it. I'm a competitor myself. I've said no to shows I've wanted to do, but I couldn't make work financially or work related or whatever reason. So yeah, I totally get why the guys couldn't come for various reasons. Especially
Yeah.
like Nanamu coming from Australia is so fucking expensive.
I
Like so,
it it's funny because I've had like I'll call it like American strongman competitor guilt,
Yeah,
like because I went and like you look up flights overseas and you're like every big show, you obviously well, I'm talking to OSG really.
yeah,
I guess you can throw the Arnold in there, people have come across for that as well, but it's like man, for so long everything has been so catered to us at the weight
yeah,
class, especially weight class, amateur level, um OSG that like I was happy to see a really big show come to fruition that wasn't in America. Obviously, if I was competing, it would be helpful
yeah.
if it was in America. However, it just seems so much more fair and levels the playing field to have it somewhere other than the US, right?
Well, yeah, that was the big thing really, and like I was also impressed and interested to see how many Americans came over because historically Americans, because obviously I've been doing it a while now, and getting Americans to leave America has been hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fact that we had 11 guys fly over from America, so basically half our field was from the US, I thought was cool as fuck.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I was gonna ask you what the number is. You said 11 that
11 out of
actually
the
made it.
25 guys were American, yeah.
Wow. That's that's really impressive. It's like you look at like entry fees and stuff like that in OSG stuff. The Arnold. It's expensive to do.
I I th- I think a
Like
lot of Americans would be surprised um how much they can travel internationally for because I know from speaking to American guys like if you're flying from the west coast of America to the east coast of America, the flight the cost in difference in cost between flights from say one part of America to another part of America or to the UK isn't that much.
oh really?
Plus our hotels are cheaper over here, the food's cheaper. So like I wouldn't be surprised if some of the American, if you were like frugal there, you could do it for not that much more than you would spending going to the Arnold or OSG if as an American. Like, um, I've got flights to Florida in the last few years for like $600 return.
Wow. Do you think do you think that athletes that come from overseas get their performance struggles if it's coming from the UK to OSG? Do you think their performance struggles?
Um, it can. I think it's really important. Like I would say, going out earlier. Like some of the guys came over, flew in on like Thursday morning or Thursday evening. Um, some of them flew in on Friday morning for a Saturday weigh-in, and I was like, flying all across the ocean with only 2 days' notice is probably not long enough. Like when we go to OSG, we go out on the Monday before, so we are there for 4 or 5 days before the competition starts.
Right.
Um, which obviously costs more money, and I totally get flying doing a red eye flight overnight on the Thursday is probably more cost effective, but it
Right,
can
right.
it can definitely affect your performance, especially if like you cut in weight on a plane. It's freaking
That's
horrible.
yeah, that was my next point. I think I people that aren't weight class athletes don't see it when they travel,
Yeah.
but it's like the hardest part of prep. The most I wouldn't say the hardest, but the most stressful thing if you're a weight class athlete, 80, 90, 105, 120 now, whatever, you're traveling and you're in the most stressful part. You're either super full on water or you're dehydrated and your calories are definitely lower. So add all that into travel and stress and everything like that, it's makes for a hell of a week to travel, so that's why I
But
kind of
that,
asked the question, do you think it affects,
yeah,
athletes?
it definitely makes a difference, which is why I think it's important to move these big comps around. Because otherwise, the Americans are just going to have the advantage every single year.
Yeah, and I actually heard Andrew Clayton make a point one time that I thought was pretty unique, and he said, "Where you go in the world, strongman has their preferred events. So like
Yeah,
UK has more UK-ish events."
yeah.
Um, and like I thought that was really, really interesting to hear because like I don't even think about that stuff. You know what I mean? I've never had to do an international comp. I don't keep up with, UK and stuff as much as, so
Well, like an example is Do you know the dumbbell medley that they had at OSG last year, right?
Right.
We don't have dumbbells like that in the UK. Like you can't buy them. Like the only type of dumbbell we have are like the sharp edged, like
Yeah,
rollable
yeah.
monster ones, and they feel completely freaking different.
Way different.
So like just little things like that, which I think, give the local people an advantage because you can go and buy the equipment.
For
Um,
sure. Even
like I'm not,
you may be within like 4 hours of someone who
yeah,
they're using their equipment, you know what I mean?
yeah. Whereas like those dumbbells just don't exist in the UK, so it doesn't matter where I travel, I'm not going to be able to get my hands on it.
Wow.
Um, like obviously for this year for the press medley, it's the Australians with an exact advantage because of the anchor
They
yokes, and
that yeah, which is a really, really cool. I'm excited to see that this
so
year.
I'm not complaining about that. I think it's just part and parcel of the sport, but it does add a different dynamic to each event. And obviously, I tried to pick events that were um, fairly basic. So like they were pretty standard events, right? There was a yoke,
Yeah, yeah. They're very
farmer.
it was a very like strongman, like
Yeah.
pure like it was like a like a grassroots like strongman blue blood like events, I guess I'm
But
sort
I
of.
picked events like that on purpose because I was like, I don't want someone to be at a disadvantage by me putting in something crazy. Like, I can't think of any examples right now,
Yeah.
but like,
But like
pick it.
a US or UK
Yeah,
manufactured only item, you know. Yeah,
yeah,
I see
exactly. So
100% what you're
like,
saying.
obviously we had the Husafel sandbags, but the guy who made them in the UK, I sent his link out to all the Americans. He was willing to
And
post them there.
we also have Husafel
Yeah.
sandbags.
So
So
I tried to make it fairly basic on that front. On purpose because I've been in that situation before of doing a show and not being able to touch the implement.
right.
And like for smaller comps, I don't really care as much. But for like a world championship, I feel like
Right.
it was. So I'll give you an example. PSL, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the 64 show that Rihanna just did. They had a fire hydrant in the loading medley. Fire hydrants don't exist in the UK. We don't. Our firefighters don't use them.
Wow. That's really
So
crazy.
we had no way of getting a fire hydrant, like
Oh
unless we
man.
imported one from the US.
Wow.
Um,
That's incredible. That's like little stuff you don't think about at all.
yeah,
That's really, really that's cool to hear. That sucks for having to train on it.
oh
But
well, like Rhea and Kate didn't care because they're savages and they just go
right.
there wherever they want. Like, but
Yeah.
um, stuff, little things like that, where someone uses a piece of equipment, so any American girls who have access to one of those are going to have an advantage. Granted, a fire hydrant isn't something you can just buy off Rogue, so it is harder to get for the Americans as well. Um, but some stuff like that is I see pop up every now and then because obviously they had a fire hydrant at the Arnold as well, I believe.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, yep.
I know a few British guys were going over like, how the hell do I train this?
Yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about is the online qualifier. You mentioned like,
Yeah,
so people who haven't been keeping up with the chaos stuff, or you're just like kind of get new to strongman, whatever. The show got so big that Luke had to offer like he mentioned, it became just it was going to be a smaller show for Americans to travel over and have fun and be what it is. And it got big. And so they had to offer an online qualifier. And what Luke did, which I was actually talking on the podcast and I'm like, I think online qualifiers are stupid with the 3 events and it's really hard to get them right,
yeah.
in my opinion. And I'm not the say all for strongman. Trust me. I'm just like, and I'm trying to just say my piece. And like, I think a lot of the online qualifiers we've done recently are stupid. But long story short, what Luke did that I thought was really cool and made an online qualifier, he did 5 events.
Yeah.
Now he's probably caused a lot of work for himself, 40% more, uh,
There's a lot of
more,
lot of videos.
yeah, a lot of videos, but man, I just think that gives you such a well-rounded athlete. Um,
Well, I think it proved itself. The fact that the guy who won the online qualifier came fifth in the comp.
See, there you go.
Jim Mitchell won the online qualifier, and he came fifth, which shows that we found the right guys. And to be
Wow,
fair,
that is impressive. I didn't know he qualified via online.
yeah, yeah,
He had an awesome weekend.
he did. And like other guys who qualified online could have placed like probably top 10 if they hadn't made one or two mistakes. Like who else? Andrew Pepio
Yep.
qualified online, and he like I made a big mistake on the yoke sandbag medley, which cost him a lot of points. But like other than that, he would have probably been in the top 10. So yeah, I thought I'm like you. I hate the traditional online qualifiers, even though they suit me down to the ground because I'm like more of a static lifter, and obviously I tend to get loads of points on the deadlift and stuff. I just feel like they don't find the best guys for the shows.
Well,
Um,
the way I look at it is if you go to a strongman comp, right? Just any comp, you're going to be moving for about half of that comp, right?
yeah,
Give or take. Some shows are very static, some shows are very moving.
yeah,
But I would say traditionally you're going to move for half of it, right? And very rarely are there moving events in online qualifiers. And I get it's a little harder, but like this year for OSG, which we all consider worlds right now, and there's essentially two max deadlifts
yeah,
and a static 1 rep max press.
yeah,
It's like, so in my mind, I've said I think the best person's always going to still find a way to get there.
yeah.
Most of the time, but I really, really I wanted to bring that up. I'm glad you mentioned it because I like the 5 event and I think it helps you find the best athletes. What were your 5 events?
They were max log press. We had a max log in the show. Um, Deadlift for reps. It was like 600 pounds, I think.
Which is cool
Um,
too. Like that's another thing is
I
giving
think
them the weights. I
yes,
don't get why we don't do that
yeah,
with online qualifiers. First off, it makes it, in my opinion, it makes it easier for the people watching the videos.
right. So
And you give a what, like a couple percent variance, like a whatever, just
yeah, I
because.
think it said like 1 or 2 pounds, obviously depending on their plates
Yeah,
and stuff like. Um, what someone said to me, which I didn't realize at the time, but makes loads of sense. So I think it was a French guy pointed out to me. He said, "So say when OS3 says you have to do a 3 rep max deadlift, right? Say the third rep is bounced, and they have to take it away. That guy then scores 0, right?
that's a great point.
Whereas if I give a 600 pound deadlift for reps and I have to take 2 reps away, he still gets a score.
He still gets points.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that is a
So,
great.
which I hadn't even considered, but it's like, yeah, that's obvious now when you think
Right.
about it.
And it's also, I mean, just think about the sport of strongman. You don't go for a max, you do. You pick
Yeah,
your weight, you jump jump in where you can and where you strategically choose to, but if I go to a show and me and you're doing deadlift for reps, we don't have to
give me the
guess
same
what
weight.
we're doing. They're
Yeah,
telling us what we're doing, right?
yeah.
So it's
So
like,
I think OSG should just like pick a weight for the 64s, pick a weight for the 73s, and so on and so forth, and say that's your
mhm,
weight. Rep that out because then I know people say, "Oh, it's hard to judge, test, and go on video." It's not. It's fucking easy. Just use your
yeah,
eyes. Like, but if you just give a set weight, then if you have to be a dick and take away a few reps, the guy still scores. Whereas, like I said, if you have to take away a rep on anything else, they just zero.
amazing point. That is an
Um,
amazing point. I never thought of that.
so our online qualifiers are always just going to be a set weight for something, other than unless we do a max again, which is a fine. Max is a different because you either lock it out or you don't. It's 1 rep.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, so I wanted to pick events. They were max log press, 600 pound deadlift for reps. Uh, it was a carry for distance. I think it was a 300 pound. And I said you could use whatever implement you wanted, just so it's more inclusive. So some people use sandbags, some people use a block, some people use a Husafel. Um, then it was a 270 pound sandbag load for reps over a 48-inch bar. and a 300-pound farmer's hold for time for the grip element. So I would like to have a little bit more moving in it, but it's hard.
Yeah, well, that's also it's gonna be the hardest one to judge, but you
Yeah,
still also had a good amount of moving. Even when I say moving, I consider like sandbag
loading reps. Yeah,
loading
yeah,
for reps. That's
yeah,
moving. Like
yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you got to go out there and we got to mark off a mile,
yeah,
and exactly measure everything, but like stuff that test like athleticism of
yeah.
a strongman athlete, because there is a lot of athleticism in it. And it's like I get discouraged when I see like OSG online qualifiers, and I'm like, this is almost like powerlifting, how static it is, and it's
I also made the events quite similar to the actual events of the show. Um, the reason I did that this year was because we did the online qualifier quite late, so I wanted people to be able to prep for the online qualifier and then basically go straight into the prep for the show
right.
because it was the same event essentially. Um,
Yeah, you were pretty damn close with
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
and it also gave me data to use for the weights of the show. So I have a list of the 30 guys who entered now and what their max log was.
Wow, that's
I
cool.
have 30 guys. I know how many reps they can get on a 600-pound deadlift, so I can use that to pick the deadlift weight for the show. Do you
That's
mean
yeah.
it gives you data? Whereas if you have events that are completely fucking different, like um, yeah, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see what having data for a 5-second farmer's hold pickup is going to help with anything.
Yeah. I I
But that's
agree.
but that's just me. I I
Yeah.
did I did want to use this information to help myself basically
Yeah.
pick the event weights.
Do you find sometimes with shows, like any level of show, if there's a disconnect, I see it. That's why I'm asking you. If a promoter is removed from weight class to at like it just a heavyweight, whatever, always been, I always find the weight matrix is very, very far off what it should be.
Oh, 100%.
Like, because they just don't know what a
Yeah,
64
women can
kilo
do.
woman or an 80 kilo guy, whatever, like, and it's either way too light, way too heavy. I find that to be a disconnect sometimes. So I think it's really cool to continue to use like the data, like you said, and you can go and pull from other show. You can go on like Iron Podium
Yeah. Well,
and
that's what I do. I've got like I have all the last 5 years of OSG on my computer results saved. So if I want to go have a look at a weight class,
yep,
I'll watch what the overhead press be for the 73 kilo class. I can go see, oh well, this is what they do in our OSG,
yep,
and then scale back from there or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, but I do see that in the UK a lot as well. Whenever a heavyweight runs a weight class show, the weights are
yeah,
all over the place. Like one event might be right, like the deadlift might be fine, and then the overhead might be way too heavy or way too light. Or
yeah. Yeah, I think with all the data, like it's really important. We had a sandbag toss, a 5 bag sandbag toss. So and it was for a regional event that we hosted. Like for the winners got a trip to the Arnold. That's
yeah,
kind of like how it was. So all I did was go to OSG, use the same bar height, and then I scaled it back 1 bag
yeah.
because and it's like that's about the level of pool of athletes, and it turned out to be pretty damn spot on, to be honest.
It's gonna sound super judgmental, but I just think a lot of promoters are just lazy and
Oh, it
they can't be bothered to go do some research basically, and that's what it boils down to.
well, we have so many local shows, especially here in the United States, where the accessibility to strongman, which is a great thing, right? It's at its all-time high. The
Yeah,
accessibility, it's easy to get a kit for strongman. I was at a show this weekend I thought was really cool, and it was a small show. It was called the Small Town Strength Challenge, and it only had 20 people at it.
yeah,
But it was really cool. It was in a really small town, and the promoter bought a strongman implement that you can do 4 events on with
genius.
one piece of equipment. And I was like, it's crazy how accessible it is, to how easy it is to run a show now. So
Yeah,
while that's good that strongman's so accessible, it's so easy to run a show where you can have bad eggs come in and run shows because they're paying. In the US, we pay a sanctioning fee,
yeah.
and that's all you gotta do is just $200.
In
You
the
can run a
UK, you
show.
don't even have to do that. You can
Yeah.
just run a show.
Right.
because everything's unsanctioned. So it's like, yeah, we have some absolutely crazy shows over here that like are awful.
Yeah. It's the only time I see it where I'm like, just I there's a couple things like obviously don't want anyone to get hurt.
Yeah,
Like there's sometimes I see setups and I'm like, man,
wrong.
this could go really bad, you know. But also it's like I remember my first strongman comp and it was so awesome and the promoter did such a good job and that's why I fell in love with strongman, right? I picture all those people their first time. I just want them to like strongman, you know.
Well, that's why we run so many like so I think I spoke to you before in the UK that like everything's separate over here. So we run like novice shows completely separate to like weight class
Mhm.
shows. So we run a lot of novice shows, like first timer shows and like beginner stuff because obviously we're confident that we can run a good comp. So I want people's first experience in the sport to be positive so they come
Yeah,
back. If your first comp is an absolute shit show, you're gonna be like, oh, maybe this isn't the sport for me.
right.
Like I was I can't remember what my first show was. I'm too fucking old now.
It must have been fine because you liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
don't think I didn't really know any better at the time anyway, so it
right.
wouldn't have mattered. But especially with like with social media and stuff now, it's so easy to find competitions, and I think it's really important that like the beginners comps, especially and the novice stuff, is like run really well because that's where our next pool of athletes is going to come from.
100%. Yeah, I just look at it. I'm like, man, if I went to a comp and it was 40 people and it took me 11 hours, I'd be like, man, fuck this. This sucks. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to do this every time I want to have to compete. So it's such a responsibility for the promoters. And that's why like when I speak out about it, I'm not being a dick. I'm just like, it's it's not that hard. It's just I think 99% of being a promoter in strongman, and I'm far from perfect. I have so much to learn. I learn something every time, but it's just caring.
yeah,
If you genuinely care
yeah.
and you dude, it's gonna be better than 99.9% of the comps if you care.
Care if you care and you put planning in. That's all you fucking need.
Yep.
Like having fancy equipment doesn't matter. Having like crazy heavy weights doesn't matter. Just giving a shit
Yep.
and putting in the actual planning is all that's needed to run a good show.
Yeah, and I you know, I think too, no matter the level of athlete, you know, whether they're just starting or they're, you know, the guys at the 90 kilo show this past weekend that are some of the top in their class, um, everyone wants us to be treated like an athlete, right? Because everyone prepped the same, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
everyone is whether it's a novice show that you're running or the Chaos Classic, everyone prepared and made sacrifices, trained their ass off. So it's like treating them like an athlete and like how they should be treated, that goes a long way, you know, little
Yeah,
stuff.
100%.
So, yeah, I those are really really good points. What's your vision for Chaos for like I know you said maybe on Instagram 2025 expanding it more. Is that
Yeah.
kind of
Um. So yeah, we're adding the 64s next year. Obviously that's Ree's class, so that's her baby is the 64. So she was really wanted to add those. And then provisionally, my plan is to add 73 kilos and the 80 kilo men in 2025.
man,
I
that's
don't see us ever going past that, mostly because I feel like middleweights have loads of opportunities already. Especially in Europe, there's a really healthy 105 scene in mainland Europe.
yeah, I
They have,
mean we have like over here we have PSL. I mean, not I shouldn't say just over here because it's obviously international athletes can compete, but yeah, I think with the emergence of Clash, 105s have
yeah,
gotten a lot of, you know,
82s get a lot of stuff in America as well. America, the strongest woman is really big for the 82s. 82s still get invited to the Arnold Pro show, like Sam Bellevue, Mel Peacock, the Nadia Stowers, etc. Getting invited to the big shows.
yeah,
So I feel like it's the lightweights that we want to focus on.
that's
Um,
cool.
so yeah, I can't see us ever going past that. Um, but then just obviously just making it bigger and better every year. Like long term, I'd love to host the Chaos Classic in like a fucking arena, like Giants Live do
Right.
with 1,000, 2,000, whatever people watching. Obviously, that's a couple of years in the future, but that's my long term goal. I want to keep improving the domestic scene in the UK because obviously I've been running the 80s stuff for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I want to try and get that more aligned with the other weight classes as well. So the 90s, the 105s, the women's. I want to try and make it a little bit more organized because in the UK it's kind of fucking all over the place. So
Yeah.
speaking to the promoters, getting our calendars more synced up, that sort of thing. And then yeah, going from there. Like long term, I feel like what we need internationally to have a healthy sport, basically, especially for lightweights who want to be quote unquote professionals. Like obviously OSG is the world championships. And if we can have like a healthy pro show in the UK, a pro show in America, maybe if Ultimates continues to grow in Europe, and then we have 3 or 4 big shows every year for the under 80s, under 90s, and the lightweight women, and then they can build their season around it. Whereas right now, you basically have to wait till OSG every year.
Yep.
Obviously, the 80s, the Arnolds is quite big for the 80s because you don't have a pro card, so you actually do tend to get a lot of the best guys there. But I feel like the 105s has been the 90s has been the forgotten class in America for a while because obviously it's just been a subdivision of middleweights, I believe, for like
Yeah, this was
years.
so this year was the first
The
year in
first time, yeah,
America that
yeah,
it was the 200s nationals. Like, because I always felt bad. Like, my first nationals, I remember watching CJ Pierce
yeah,
dominate. Like,
yeah,
go to nationals. He's doing the same weights as the 105s and he's dominating. But then he gets like seventh overall.
yeah.
And you're like, that's weird, like, so yeah, that's also this year. I think they just announced that this winter they're gonna try to do the 200s America's Strongest Man for it.
Yeah. What confuses me about that is I love James and I love what he's trying to do. I think he's running some great comps.
Yeah, I think James. I want to get James on here soon because
James is great,
he's
but I just
awesome.
don't really understand what that show is doing because they're not offering pro cards. The prize they haven't said if there's going to be any prize money or on the level of the class. So it just seems to me like it's a second nationals.
Well, that's my point. That's what I said when it came out. What
So
would
what's the point of it?
differentiate that from nationals?
Yeah,
Well, I
exactly.
mean, maybe. I mean, I guess maybe just saying that they have their own little comp like that focuses on just them. But no, I know what you mean. Like, in my opinion, nationals is America's strongest, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that if it's called nationals, it should be. It's weird over here. We have 2 nationals. It's whatever. Um,
I
but
mean, I get it for the 105s because they always have good prize money
they also have
and
a pro. They also have a pro
yeah,
class.
and like the America's Strongest Man is a step up from nationals in terms of weights, money, competitors. But America's Strongest Man in the 90s is just going to be the same fucking thing as nationals, right?
Right. They said,
So
yeah, yeah. I
I don't get it.
exact same thoughts. Yeah.
I'm not sure who's going to do it. Obviously, it depends if more information comes out. Um, Maybe it's just a test year, and this you're going to see how successful it is, and then
Yeah.
next year it'll get bigger and have more stuff. But
I might be wrong. I think they said they were gonna run it in unison with Olympia.
yeah, yeah, I think that's what I read.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be very curious to see about that as well. So
I think
maybe James is big brain and he,
yeah,
something we're not thinking of.
my goal essentially is to get all the weight classes treated the same. Like in terms of you've probably experienced it in this the mentality of the old school is that bigger is better. Heavyweight is the best, then 105 is the second best, then 90s is the third best, and then 80s is the fourth best.
Sure
Like
have.
in no other sport do you see that. Like, granted, in say UFC, for example, yeah, the heavyweight champion is called the baddest man on the planet, but
Yeah.
then the lightweight champion and the light heavyweight champion are put on equal playing field. Like one
Yep.
isn't more prestigious than the other. So why is 105 world champ seen as more prestigious than under 80s when it should be exactly the same? level of
Right.
prestige. So that's what I want to achieve with the Chaos Classic when we eventually have the 4 weight classes, the same price money for everybody, which to be fair, OSG is doing now. Um, same prestige, same treatment, not if you're bigger, you're better than the one. Like, and I want to get rid of this mentality of you should move up a weight class to challenge yourself. Like, why? If you're an 80 kilo guy and you're happy at that weight class, stay at that weight class for the rest of your career. Like,
Right. 100%. Like I think about it for me, like I was thinking about doing 165 for USS Nationals because I sit around like one like I'm pretty light for an 80 kilo guy. Like I
yeah,
sit like low to mid 180s and I'm like, shit, man, it's I'm trying to eat, got a nutritionist and everything, and I'm just like not a full 200, man. I'm just
like
not like
Ree gets pressurized, like, oh, you should move up a weight class to challenge yourself. And she was like, why? She was like, I walk around 142 pounds. Like,
right, right.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh, 73 kilos would be a bigger title. And I was like, no, it's not. It's exactly the same.
Yeah,
So,
that's a really, really good point.
like, do I think that you can do heavyweight classes at other shows for fun and to challenge yourself? Yeah, 100%. Like, I've always done heavyweight shows at like a local level and stuff to lift heavy weights. Rhea has competed in heavyweight shows at the local level, at maybe national level. She's done like some high level open shows in the UK, and she's going to be doing Giants Live, Britain's Strongest Woman, against like Lucy Underdown and Donna Moore and Andrew Thompson and stuff. But her main focus is always going to be that 64 kilo world title. And like people who are pressurizing her to go up to 73s or OSG or 82s, I'm like, fuck off.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. You just can't you can't choose really where your body weight naturally tries to
Yeah,
gravitate towards, and it does change throughout, but it's a good point. I mean, people like I competed in the 200s this weekend because I just went out to a local show.
yeah,
There was no one in the 80s or the 90s, so I'm just like there's no way I'm gonna cut for a local show, but I think that's a really cool and interesting point that you made, like making all the titles kind of mean the same thing,
yeah,
and I honestly do think with like the emergence of OSG, it has kind of done that where like
yeah. I
if you
agree.
look at Ben Donen, like he gets a lot of press time now, and it seems like without like I can't translate his stories because I don't speak French, but like it seems like he has like sponsorships, like real sponsorships
Yeah.
and stuff from like people in France, which he should if he's the world's strongest man. And I like that he literally got a tattoo that said world's strongest man. Like,
OSP are doing a great job of it. I think was it last year or the year before that where they changed it so everybody got paid the same? I can't remember. That
yeah,
was
it
a
was 2 years ago, I
yeah,
think,
that was
right?
a great move.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think OSG is doing a really good job of it. I think Lynn's doing a brilliant job. Um, but I want it to be like that across the board in the sport.
Yeah. One thing that I want to say that I think may be controversial is I wish there was a way for OSG to do payouts and do them evenly, but do it by participation. So like, for example, like if you have like they're introducing like the 50 plus women this year.
Yeah,
If they only have 7 people, you know what I mean? And they get paid out the
yeah,
same as a class that brings 40. It's like, I'm not shitting on the 50 plus women. I'll say it for any class. Like, if the 80s have 7 guys that come, I don't think they should be paid as much as the guys that had to compete against 200 people, or I mean, 40 people. So it's like, I wish there was a way to do it, but I do like, I know what you're saying. I think it's the right move long term. I just think it needs some tweaking
yeah.
with
Like
the system.
if you're introducing a new class, for example,
Yeah.
the prize money could be half for a few years
Yeah. I mean,
until the thing builds up.
when you get into that 50 plus range, when you're talking about masters, they're just not going to have as much participation. It's a physical sport, it's just the way it is. But no, 100%. I think the bigger OSG gets, the more spotlight it's put on all these weight class athletes where people now know all these people, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to individuals. I would say Ben gets a lot of attention because he's just he's been dominant over the last year.
Yeah.
Same with Rhee, like she gets probably more attention than the 73 kilo champ because she's won more things or she's more pushy on her social media and more active and stuff. Not that Hannah Brock isn't fucking awesome in the 73s,
Right.
but
Right.
like it comes down to the individuals as well. But I think it's all moving in the right direction. But yeah, I want to see it happen on a grander scale, and I do think with the emergence of the Chaos Classic, it's important because I don't think just having OSG is enough.
Right.
And that's the key point, really.
Well, like it's funny. We were talking at the beginning of the episode, like a couple guys couldn't make it out,
Yeah.
to your show. It's like one weekend, if Lynn decides it's on December 1st through the 3rd, and it's like, oh shit, my sister's getting married that weekend, and you're a really competitive guy, it's like, wow, my whole year's ruined now.
Well, yeah, the twins, the twins, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
They're not doing OSG this year because Joe's getting married
Right. And it's like,
at the
and
start of December.
that should be a higher, like, strongman's a hobby for all of us. It's like you should get married, you should go to weddings. It's like,
Oh,
but that sucks.
because one show a year.
Yeah, that sucks. Like, so yeah, that's why I think
If
I'm probably one of many people that DM'd you and was like, when's the 80s starting at Chaos? Because I want to try to qualify, and because I think that's cool. And I've also never got to travel out of the country for strongman. So like I can kind of like pair my hobby with traveling with my wife and stuff. I think that's cool, you know.
I feel like I want to do the 90s first because, especially in the UK, I feel like the 80s domestic scene now is in a very healthy place. Like Brits under 80s is probably the biggest um, national weight class comp in the UK.
Yeah.
In terms of exposure, in terms of prize money. Um, so I feel like the 80s are like got a good domestic scene. So they can wait for a little bit longer. So
Yeah. No, I was actually gonna ask that because Britain's strongest man 80s was the day before,
yeah,
right? And it seemed like it was a huge deal. And
yeah,
it seemed like your pool of athletes was really, really good. Where I was seeing a guy, because it's fun to watch your own class where you can like kind of compare yourself and be that guy that's like, oh, I could have, whatever. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, I've never even heard of this dude, and he's repping this. Like, that's so impressive. So it seemed like you have like you said, a really, really healthy pool of 80s just in Britain.
yeah. I would say it was probably non-existent 4 years ago. I would
Yeah.
say before me and Josh ran the first one, and it's kind of exploded over the last few years. It obviously helps with people like Dean going to Worlds and doing really well. The twins breaking world records. Obviously, Chris Harper has been smashing it the last year or so. He was the only guy missing from Brits, really. I don't know if you know Chris. He's a
Yeah.
Scottish champion. But his wife was due to give birth on the week of the comp, so
Oh, wow.
that's fair enough, right?
Yeah. Give him a pass on that
Yeah,
one.
give him a pass on that. But he's doing Europes in next week against Ben Donnan, so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like the 80s in a good place now, so I feel like they can wait an extra year for their international show.
Yeah.
Um, and while I push the domestic scene a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. How do you foresee? So the Europes, OSG Europes is in, when is
Next week?
that? Next week?
Yeah, next weekend. Yeah.
So this has gotten so much hype, in my opinion. I think they've gotten a amazing pool of athletes like for weight class. I mean, I foresee that going really well. I'm excited to watch and kind of see how that goes because it seems like they've really gotten a good pool of athletes.
Yeah, I would say they've got most of the best guys in Europe doing it. There's one
Yeah.
or two. There's one or two guys I could say probably are missing, but like very few. Even like they've got the top 105 from Europe's from the mainland, which we don't normally get over. Like Emmanuel Piscari's doing it,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
and obviously he won the Ultimates Worlds last year, so it's going to be good to see him up against like Matt McKeegan, Sean Diver, who came top 10 in OS3.
Yeah.
Or the 80s has got Ben Donnan, D McVie, Chris
Yeah.
Harper, a few more really good up and coming British guys like Kyle Scott, who came fourth of Brits.
Yeah, you have two of the three from podium at
Yeah,
Worlds, so
exactly.
that's
Adding
cool.
Chris into the mix.
Yeah.
The 90s has um, Gav Gav McNamee, who obviously came podium at OSG. Dan Benson, who just won the Chaos Classic. Mike Dell, who came sixth for the Chaos Classic,
Yeah.
uh, and then a whole host of European guys. Um, and this is what's going to be interesting as well. So what people don't realize is, so Europe's online qualifier was really tough. Like
Yeah.
I tried qualifying for it, and I put up what I thought were good numbers, and I came out 14th in the 105, and I didn't qualify, right?
Oh
Um,
wow.
but because it was a very static qualifier, the guys who qualified, so two of the guys who qualified for the 90s didn't qualify for the Chaos Classic. Like they did the online qualifier for the Chaos Classic, but they didn't make it. But then the OSG online qualifier was more static based, so they qualified.
Hmm.
So it's going
Yeah.
to be interesting to see how they do in the actual full show.
Yeah.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to name names who they are, but
Right.
like I'm interested to see how the guys who didn't make it through my qualifier do at this big show.
Right. Yeah. That's the whole premise behind like what I'm saying with static online qualifiers is I'm curious, you know.
Because the Europe's online qualifier was
It's like
uh,
mm,
3 rep max log,
yep.
uh, 5 rep max deadlift, bounce in allowed,
Yep.
and max stone. So
Like
that's
a max stone load, right?
yeah, which is a completely different caliber of athletes to the qualifier that I did.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, the men's classes are stacked. The women's are good as well. Don't get me wrong, but like the men's ones are really, really, really stacked.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk real quick before we wrap up. So we're talking about the caliber of athletes and that you were able to pull at Chaos, and you mentioned Dan Benson.
Yeah,
So you can kind of I know like when you're promoting a show, you don't want to be biased and like rank who you think's gonna win and stuff like that because it's like you're running it, right?
yeah.
But did you think Dan was gonna like have such a I guess just decisive victory? Like, did you see that was in the cards?
I thought he was going to. I had him on my podium.
Yeah.
I thought he was one of the contenders to win. I did not have anybody winning by 15 points.
Well, that was the only I guess my only knock on my I guess we were talking at the beginning, like you said, nothing could have went wrong. I think for me, from a spectator, the only thing that went wrong was Dan screwed you by being so
Yeah,
dominant.
yeah.
And it
We
was
knew who
like,
the winner was going to be
yeah, the
before the last
sixth event,
event.
it's like, oh, well, Dan just has to literally continue to breathe and he wins, like there was no drama. It did
At
help
least,
there was drama for the podium.
yes, that's what I was going to say. We had
Like,
like I think we had like 8 guys who could still come second or third going into
yeah,
the
like
power stands.
I thought it was so cool. And like I respect like CJ Kraus, for example, like
Yeah.
he says he's an 80. He's pretty tubby. So I don't know if he's gonna continue in the 90s or what, but like how in all seriousness, how he like really sold out for that last event. And it obviously didn't work for him, but I think it's so cool to see an athlete like really sell out for that podium spot. How much you could tell how much it meant to all those guys that were in contention. It obviously didn't work out for CJ, but like I respect an athlete so much for doing that and like, you know,
CJ went from third to seventh, eighth, I think, after
yeah.
the power stairs, and like other guys jumped up all over the place. So yeah, it was annoying that Dan already had the win wrapped up,
Yeah.
but it was good. At least there was some drama. If the top three, I find with a lot of these comps, like the top three kind of break away early. Like I would say at Brits, for example, Dean and the twins, after event three, really, they were like, okay, that's probably going to be your podium, guys.
Yeah.
So there wasn't that much drama. There was like a battle for fourth and fifth between Kyle and Tommy, and like a battle for sixth between Connor and Andrew and stuff. But the podium was sewn up with like 2
Yeah.
events to go, really, in the 80s. Um, so yeah, I had my podium. Who did I say would podium before the show? I said Dan Benson, Gav McNamee. I thought would podium, and then I said one of Nick O'Hare and Derek. Those were the guys I thought would be on the podium, and
Yeah.
that just shows how competitive it was. That Derek and Gavin were both outside the top 10.
Crazy. And it's like, and John Hack obviously was
Dude,
like the main talking point. It always blew my mind. Like I was talking with a couple of friends that do powerlifting, and I don't know why people are shocked that he's good because he's the elite athlete. Like,
it's in the word, it's strong man.
Yeah,
Like,
like who thought like John Hack? I just didn't understand. Like, who thought he was just gonna go and be bad?
yeah, I didn't get it.
Like
I did not think he'd be that good.
insane. Like, and obviously learning strongman would help him. Like, I think
Yeah.
if he was full bore strongman, I think he would have won. Like, I think you
So,
give him like 2 years, he would have won.
dude, it wasn't even 2 years. So even though Dan Benson won by 15 points, right? If you actually look at the events, if John Hack had got that 308 log and loaded that second sandbag, he would have won the show.
Yeah, it's
Because
crazy.
he lost 15 points by failing that second load.
Well, like, and look at like you can just tell how unfamiliar he is because him and Nick O'Hare had that tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Just the way John picked up Nick,
Biceps.
yeah, Nick had it so far back, it wasn't even moving. And then John was like, really far forward. So yeah, like
John did ask for a max deadlift as the tie break. But I was like, they've already done 6 events.
yeah.
I want to say, like, shout out to John as well. I wasn't sure what to expect, obviously, because greatest powerlifter in the world. Super nice guy, no ego whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, got on with it, no morning or weekend. Like, just he was great to work with. Like, I can't fault him at all.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it seems like it all worked out, man. And unless you have anything else, I just man, I really appreciate anything you want to bring up with strongman in general, before we go.
Um,
Anything you need to
anything
promote, anything like that, man, feel free to, let people know, everything.
Um, not really. I would just say like the guys who are watching this pod are obviously big fans of the weight classes. So I would just say keep watching the streams, like keep signing up. Even if you're American, watch Europe's Strongest Man next weekend. Do you know what I mean? Like hype up the weight class guys. Um, watch the streams for America's Strongest Man weight classes. Show that there's interest there. Because the fact that we had, I can't remember, I think we had like 100 viewers from the US on the live stream for a pay per view for a weight class show in the UK. So like we can use that data now to say to our sponsors, oh look, there's interest in this.
Yep.
So like it all helps and it's just gonna make the sport grow and grow. So just like, yeah, support your weight classes, watch the streams. Like I buy pretty much every stream that I see pop up to do with strongman, even if I have zero intention of watching it.
Right.
Like, granted, if you can't, I get the money's tight sometimes, blah blah blah. But if it's $5 and you have to spare, buy it. Um, yeah, just continue to support the sport basically because it all helps each other.
Yep. Right
And
on, man. Well,
I feel I feel like to expand on that point one more is that I want promoters to stop having pissing contests. And I'm like, if one Fed grows, the other Fed's gonna grow. If like, and it should we should all be helping each other like get bigger and get better. So yeah, you wouldn't. I might like criticize something in terms of how it was run, but it's not because I want to see it fail. It's the opposite. I want to see it get better and succeed because that helps me.
oh,
In
100%.
so yeah,
Yeah. Well, Luke Davis, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Make
no
sure you
worries.
guys are following him. Make sure you guys are checking out Chaos, everything that they have going on because they have a ton. I see you guys posting clothes, yeah, everything, man. So, really
You can
appreciate the time.
you can still go back and watch the live stream as well of the classic if you haven't already. So that's going to be up. Well, for the next year, I think it'll still be up.
So,
So
do they find that on ADL?
yeah, if you go to AD, I'll get it exactly now. 2 seconds.
I really, really recommend people go and watch it
It's
because it was so high quality.
if you go to adlpro.live/chaos with a K, the live stream is up for that for both Brits and the 90s. So you can still go watch it. Message us on Instagram, tag us, let us know what you thought. And yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man.
thanks for having me.